typing last class. Okay. So we had this fun little activity that we did to learn about all the different transitions and settings for prototype. And we also hit on scrolling, which is very helpful and very important for a lot of designers out there. So if you didn't get to catch on towards the end, or if you're confused, we have a short 5 minute, and it's only 5 minutes because Loom only lets you do 5 minute for free. So I promise it's only 5 minutes. So check it out if you need more help with scrolling, both vertical and horizontal. And our moderator should be dropping the link for that in the chat. If not, you should be having access to that in the Discord as well and in the emails too. Cool. So for today, as I mentioned before, we're going to be learning about auto layout. If this is a new word for you, I'll be jumping right in. But so far, we've learned about low fidelity, high fidelity, prototype, and now the next section that we're going to do is a little more complex design techniques that will help you design faster and make your entire design process more efficient as well. So the first step of that is auto layout. So what is auto layout? Auto layout helps us create designs that grow to fill and shrink to fit. So if this is confusing for you, just look at this image on the right, or this GIF on the right. So if you see, as the size of the text is changing, the outside label is also expanding with it. So that's what grow to fill means. And similarly, it'll also shrink to fit according to the content. So what this means in the end is everything reflows as the content changes. So it makes designing so much more easier, because without auto layout, you'd have to change the size of the box and then change the size of the text. And it's a lot of manual work. So that's the introduction to auto layout. And here's a live example of how it can kind of make your designs easier too. So if you're trying to make a calendar and say you want to do a mobile screen and a desktop screen, this is something you can do with auto layout more easily. And I want to show you an example of that real quick. And hopefully this kind of blows your mind. Oh, give me 1 second. I think I lost. Okay. So back here, so I made this using auto layout, this little thing right here, and I'll show you how it's been built in detail later. That's what the workshop is for, but quickly, pretend that this is the desktop version of an album description or an artist description here in context, Pink Sweats. So we're going to be seeing how this can turn into mobile with just one click. So are you ready? I'm just going to do this, and ta-da! So this is how you can use auto layout to make responsive design that you can change and manipulate and use easily with just the click of one button. So this is desktop, this is mobile. You can play with different responsive designs, and I just kind of wanted to show you that. And a couple of other things like the content stuff that I talked about earlier. If I expand the content, the container changes accordingly. So that's kind of how auto layout is helpful. So back to the presentation. So in a sense, it really helps us create responsive design. And responsive design, if you've not heard the term before, it talks about how design should be able to respond according to your screen size. So we usually have two viewports. So we have mobile, we have desktop, we have tablet, and we have a couple of others as well. So when you want your design to dynamically change as you switch to these different viewports, that's what we call responsive design, because it responds to the different screen sizes and adjusts the design accordingly. So how can this help you? First, it helps you make live changes super quick. So as you're seeing on this GIF right here, if you have one of these tiles laid out, you can just make multiple versions of these tiles quickly and easily. And if you want to make content changes, it's just really easy to make changes. And the second thing is, when you go into the corporate world of design, you'll be given a design system that has specific measurements and specific instructions about spacing. So if you want to follow all that and the spacing and the alignment, auto layout really helps us with that, because I'll show you in detail later, but it helps you kind of follow that very easily. And lastly, it also helps us prototype smoothly. So if you remember from last time, Dylan taught you guys how to do Smart Animate. So Smart Animate works really well with auto layout, and because Figma is smart enough to understand that when you put something in an auto layout and you're trying to smart animate it animates it really smoothly. So you don't have to worry about how your content is being shown in different prototype screens. So these are the benefits and even more. So this is the step I was talking about earlier, by the way, with spacing and stuff. So as you can see here, they're just kind of adjusting the spacing and the content is just changing accordingly, and you can change the alignment as well. So last biggest thing that it really helps you do is also communicate with developers. So auto layout is a concept that is based on CSS Flexbox. So to kind of give you an example to understand a little easier, if you've used Word before, which I really hope you have, you'll see the different alignment things, right? So there's like left align, center align, right align, and then within a box too, there's like justified to the top, bottom, and that's kind of what CSS Flexbox is about. So this little orange thing is called a container, and all of the items inside of it are items or components. Now, if you're trying to adjust the way that these items respond inside the container, you have different settings such as flex start, flex end, center. And I won't go too much into detail about the developer stuff, but basically this really helps you talk to your developers because you know exactly how they're visualizing it too, because they have their own way of reading your designs and thinking about how to implement it. If you learn auto layout, you'll be able to communicate it better with them, whether you need to add another container or organize the existing layout. So auto layout will help you communicate with developers as well. So how do we do this? I'm going to give you guys instructions, and obviously we're going to do a live demo, but I wanted to give you this slide so you can kind of have it as a reference as we go throughout the workshop. So there are three main settings that I'll just kind of talk about. So on your right side frame, you'll see the section called auto layout once enabled. And this top part just talks about the layout direction. So first you can arrange things to be vertical, which is the first arrow that's going down. You can arrange it to be horizontal, or you can arrange it to be wrapped. And the second part talks about the gap between each of the elements. So you can set that to be like 25 in this case, 10, whatever you want. So that's the spacing between each of the different elements that you have. This third row is for padding. So padding is, if you saw in the earlier slide, this container has padding all around it to make sure that the contents don't go beyond the size of the container. So that's what padding allows you to do. You can just hug the content and make sure that the content is within the container. And lastly, this little grid here is all about alignment. So obviously, if you want to align it to the top center, this is middle, middle, and then this is like left, bottom. So this is just going to help you with alignment. And lastly, in order to actually set responsiveness, so that, that quick button thing that I showed you earlier, where you can change from desktop to mobile, you really need to know how to use these three settings, which is fixed, hug, and fill. So there are some rule of thumbs to keep in mind for this. I'll be talking about this as well. But if you forget any of this, just use the slide to come back to where we are. So with that, we will get started. You should be having a link to this page. So I just want you guys to claim a section, give it a color if you want, and I'll give you just a minute or so to do that. I see some colors coming in. And if you still have your hi-fi screen from last time, you can grab that. Or I would actually recommend what would be easier is if you want to go and download three album artists or three albums that you want, so that we can use it for this layout, just to kind of let you guys personalize it and make your own screen. So I'll give you another minute to do that as well. So just go on Google and download three album pieces, album covers, sorry. And if you don't want to do that, we've already given you a couple of them that you can use right here. So there's some Music while I let you guys do that. I'll give you guys 1 more minute to dump any album covers that you want. Make sure to save the file as a JPEG or a PNG so we can use them. One more minute. All right. For the sake of time, I will get started. But hopefully you have at least one album cover that you want. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully you have at least one album cover that you want in your Spotify page. Okay. So let's get started. So this bottom rectangle are all the assets you'll need for today. And this top rectangle on the right is like some references as we start building it. So you can use the space over here to build, or you can build directly here. I'm just going to start off right here. Okay, so let's go and grab the first album image that you want. So again, just click on it and just put it in your workspace wherever you're working. So I'm just going to drag it up and then take the text. So click on the text and drag it up as well. So throughout this workshop, I'm going to be telling you guys when you should look at my screen and when you can like look away. And this is for people that are switching tabs between Zoom and Figma. So just listen for that so you can kind of, follow along easier. Okay, so for now, I want you to look at my screen. So once you have your two elements, so we just need one album cover and one piece of text about the artist or descriptions. So we are going to select the album cover, hold Shift and select the text as well. And you are going to do Shift A, or on the right, you will see on this right-hand panel, right next to all of the measurements, you'll see a text that says Auto Layout. You're going to click on the plus sign next to that. So again, now you can look over in your screen. I'll repeat the directions. So select the album cover, select your text by holding Shift, and on your right side panel, you will see Auto Layout, and click on the plus sign next to the word Auto Layout. So once you've done that, you should see it's saying frame with a random number. So I just want you guys to name that frame. So you're going to double click on the text that says frame 37, whatever number yours says. So double click on it and just type album. So we're just naming these so it's easier for me to tell you guys which ones to select. So you want the first one to be called album, and I want you guys to do that 2 more times for the rest of these album covers. So I'll repeat the directions as we go. So again, grab your album cover, your text, or you could just work there as well. Select the album cover, hold Shift and select the text, and use Shift A on your keyboard or on the right panel where it says Auto Layout, click plus, and name the frame by double clicking on the frame and typing album. Do that a third time, hold Shift, album cover and text, Auto Layout, double click on the frame and name it album. So I hope at this point everyone has 3 albums that they've named. So I'm just back here. Okay, maybe I'll give you guys a minute to do so. Again, if you want the directions again, select the cover, hold Shift, select your text, and on the right side, you will see the word Auto Layout. Click on the plus sign next to that, and double click on your frame and type album. All right, so once you have 3 of these different albums, you should see that on the right side. Now I want you to look at my screen so I can show you the settings that you should be seeing. So I'm going to select this album, and on the right side panel, you see in this auto layout, Figma is already smart. It already saw the way you arranged the different items and it decided to give you a vertical layout. So that first arrow you see right there is vertical layout. So it figured that out. Perfect. It set an automatic spacing of 20. Cool. We'll adjust that later. And the alignment is set to be aligned top left. So this is what Figma has already done for you, and it didn't add any padding. So this looks good for now, but we want everything to be consistent, right? So if you look at your second album, it's probably different. In the third album, the spacing's probably different. So let's select our first album and okay, now you can go back to your screen. So select the first album and you'll see this pink line that says the spacing when you hover on it. So I want you to type 10 for the spacing and hit enter. So you can do that two ways. You can either click on the pink line and type a number, or you can drag it up and down to determine the spacing. I like to just click and type. Or on the right panel, you will see the second row under the vertical layout part where you can just type the number. So I'm going to do that real quick for all of them. Again, click on the pink line and type 10 for each of the albums. Make sure you click on the frame. So click on the frame by selecting the text album, select the pink line portion and type 10. Hopefully everyone has that done. I'll give you guys a few seconds. Does anyone need any help? Feel free to put it in the chat or ask our moderators. I'll try to check the chat too. And if I'm going too fast and you need me to slow down, you can just tell me in the chat to slow down too. Okay, I will continue. So now you'll have 3 albums that are perfect spacing and they look all neat and organized and they're set to be in vertical layout. Perfect. Now we're going to select all of these 3 different frames. So first you're going to click on the part that says album. You're going to hold shift, click on your second album and your third album to select everything. And I want you to go to your right panel again, where it says auto layout, and click on the plus sign. Again, Figma was smart, figured it out that you wanted a horizontal layout this time. So if you look at my screen right here, you'll see that it is already set to the arrow that's pointing to the right to a horizontal layout. It's set a spacing 16. If you see, it's already highlighting in pink that it's trying to keep the same spacing for all of the elements. So you can adjust that to be like, I think we'll do 5. No, 5 is a little tight. Let's do 10. So adjust the spacing to be 10 by clicking on that second row and just typing in 10. And I want you to rename this frame. So again, if you're not selecting the frame, it should be frame and a random number. Click on the text, double click on the text and type horizontal layout. So in the end, if you look at your layers panel, and for this part, I want you to look at my screen real quick. So you'll see in your layers panel on the left side that under your horizontal layout section, you have 3 albums that are in a vertical layout. So what we just did is called nested auto layout. So we've made 3 vertical auto layouts, and we put all of that inside a horizontal auto layout with a spacing of 10 for the sides and a spacing of 10 for each of the different vertical elements as well. Hopefully everyone has that. If anyone needs help. You guys, I'll give you another minute. If you need any help in the chat. Okay, I'm going to assume that most of us have it done. Awesome. So now that you have your horizontal layout, the first part is done. Yay, we've learned nested auto layout. Cool. So now we're going to do the rest of these different aspects. So on the right, you should see this little album cover and a text that says slow songs. And we're going to make this into an auto layout as well. So in order to do that, I want you guys to go to your top panel, like in a gray color in the top, next to the move icon, you will see this little hashtag symbol. You're going to click on that and you're going to select frame, which is the first option. So once you do that and you frame the entire section here, which is including the album cover and the slow song. So you just kind of drag it around it and it's going to add a fill automatically. So again, top panel, click on the hashtag symbol and select frame or type F on your keyboard and drag the frame around the album cover and the text slow songs. And we're going to change the fill color by clicking on, so on the right side panel, you'll see fill and it should say F, 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 which is for white. You're gonna click on that color, use the color picker icon, which is right here, and select the color right above. So if you scroll up, you'll see that I've already made these labels for you. So I want you to select that. So the color is good. And the text. Okay, so here's what's going on with mine. So when I did the frame, it didn't capture the entire text. So if you look at my screen real quick, this text on the layers panel is not included in the frame. And this might happen often when you're trying to put things into a frame. So I just wanted to show you how the layers panel can help you identify that. So I'm going to click on the text. Just gonna take it out. So I'm just gonna cut it. So I'm just gonna Control X or Command X. Select the frame by clicking on the frame and then Control V again. Now, if you see on the left panel, under frame, you have the text and the image. So if it didn't work for you, just do this. And if you probably drag the frame around the entire text, it should have worked. So now on the left side, layers panel, you'll see that under your frame, you have slow songs and you have an image. Does everyone have that? I think yes. Okay, perfect. Now we are going to name this again. I want you to call this playlist. So again, double click on the frame and type playlist. And done. So we have the playlist frame with an image and with slow songs. So I want to show you one thing real quick. Figma is kind of forcing you to do auto layout right here. You see these little this pink circle, this line, and this other pink circle. It's basically telling you if you want to adjust the spacing. And if you use these keys to adjust things, just remember that this is a one-time thing. You're not actually adding auto layout to the whole thing. So even though these look like the same auto layout functions, you haven't added auto layout to the entire frame unless you click on the frame, go to your right panel, and under auto layout, you click the plus. If you look in the layers panel on the left, it changes its symbol. So it used to be a hashtag, and now it has that little alignment bars. So only then you know that it's actually inside auto layout. So again, you click on the playlist, you go to the right panel, click on auto layout, the plus symbol, and it should add one. So again, Figma was smart and it added some padding here. How do I check that? If you look in my screen, in this playlist aspect, you have 10 padding on the top, 10 on the bottom. Yours might be different depending on the way you drew the frame. So I'm just showing you mine. And it also added spacing of 23. It put the image to the left and have the text here. So that's all we have for now. So I want you to select this frame. And if you look at the reference above, there's no padding within any of the elements. So first thing we're going to do is go to the panel on the right, and you should see a vertical padding of 10, which is the second one. So you see horizontal padding, vertical padding, it should say 10 or whatever yours says. Just change that to 0. So it looks something like this. So we're getting there, pretty close. And I want you to keep the gap between the text and the image to be 10. So how are you going to do that? You're going to click on playlist and you're going to see this little pink vertical line again. And if you hover over it, it'll say a number. Click on that and type in 10. So it automatically pushes everything inside. So hopefully everyone has that. Again, we're adding 10. 10 is the gap. So when I say gap, I just want you to know that I'm referring to the second row right here. So that's the gap between the lines. When I say padding, it's third row. So you should have 10 gap, and there should be 0 padding around the entire playlist frame. So once you have that, let's add a little radius around this. So again, this stuff is going back to the hi-fi design that you worked on. So just a refresher, I guess. So click on the playlist frame, and on the right panel, the last thing in the, so it should be below hug, it should just say 0. I want you to add a corner radius of 4. And that is pretty much it. So I want to talk about why we did this in a frame instead of doing it in a rectangle. You might think that looking at this in a high level, these look like rectangles that have corners. Yes, but you cannot add auto layout to rectangles, which is why I highly recommend that you don't do grouping and you use frames. So don't use rectangles and use frames. So get in the habit of using frames and adding fills to frames, because it's the same thing in the end if you make a rectangle and add a fill versus if you just make a frame and add a fill. So you can only do auto layout if you have it inside a frame. Cool, so hopefully everyone has that chip done. Looks like you do. Wonderful. All right, so we are going to make many versions of these, and I'm going to show you guys how to do another version of vertical and horizontal auto layout. So again, I'm going to just move this out to the side so I have some space. So I'm moving my playlist frame out here, and I'm just going to copy paste it 4 times. I'll give you, actually, no, let's just copy paste it once. So we have playlist, Control C, Control V, and then hold Shift and select both the playlist together. So hold Shift, select it, and on the right panel next to auto layout, click on the plus again. So we've added a vertical auto layout to both of the playlist frames, and it should have renamed it to frame and some random number. Double click on that frame and call it vertical layout. So if you remember in the presentation over here, it kind of showed you how to like quickly add a bunch of things. That's kind of what we're going to do now. So this is a part of the workshop where it makes your life easier if you want to add multiple things. So instead of copy pasting everything, aligning it and making sure like the gap between all of the elements are perfect, we are just going to have one playlist element, the second playlist element. You're just going to copy and don't click anywhere else. So again, so click on the playlist element inside your vertical layout frame, Control C and Control V, and it automatically pasted another playlist frame inside that layout. So how do you check for that? On your left side of your layers panel, you will see vertical layout, and you should have 3 playlist frames within the vertical layout. So we're going to do that another time. So we're going to click on the playlist frame, Control C, Control V, and boom. It maintained the same spacing that you set earlier, and it just copy pasted. Everything is aligned and neat and organized. So yay, we love it. So we're going to click on this vertical layout frame. And on the right panel, again, you'll see that there's a gap for 24. I want you to set that to 14. Yeah, I want you to set that to 14. So again, click on the vertical layout frame by clicking on the text vertical layout. And on the right panel, I want you to type 14 instead of 24, or you might have a different gap. So just click on the second row that should say vertical gap, type 14, hit enter, and it should automatically do that for you. Yay. Okay. Now we are going to click on the vertical layout frame and Control C, Control V. So I did the whole frame this time. I'm going to drag it out because Figma probably pasted it over what you already have. So now you should have 2 vertical layout frames. Great. And you'll have playlists inside each of these that are evenly spaced with 14 gap. And your playlist frame has a horizontal auto layout. So we're adding auto layout on auto layout on auto layout. And one thing I want to mention here, and I know it's a beginner class, but the more you start doing auto layout, we just have to be mindful about how many frames of auto layout you actually use, because sometimes it can get much. When you're trying to build more complex things, make sure you don't put auto layout for everything and try to think about what you actually want to put auto layout for, because you can probably do much less frames than you are envisioning. So just think about that and keep that in the back of your mind. Cool. So now we're going to select the vertical layout 1, hold shift and select the other vertical layout right next to it. And we're going to add another auto layout. So you're going to go to the right panel next to auto layout, click on the plus, Figma was smart, understood that you want to do a horizontal layout, and it already set a spacing of 17, sorry, a gap of 17, and I want you to change that to 20. So again, you're just going to click on the frame, and you'll see a pink vertical line, and set that to, oops, it's like 20. So set the gap between the two vertical layouts to 20. And let's rename this big frame and call it section. Okay, so recap. You click on the section frame. You can look at my layers panel for this, or you can just check on your screen as well. But on your layers panel, you should have a auto layout frame that says section, expand it, and you have two vertical auto layouts. So you have one vertical and you have another one right here. And inside each vertical auto layout, you have 4 playlist auto layout frames. Does everyone have that? And if you need a reference, it's built right above you. So you can use these frames again. So you can just select everything and do the auto layout, or look at the phone screen right here to kind of see how it's built. So this phone screen is called playlist section, and you'll see 2 vertical content is what I named it, with all the playlists right there. So if you want a reference, check out the phone screen. It should be exactly how it should be built. Cool. So this repeated like, what is it, 8 times, and I don't want to have the same playlist 8 times. So this is just a practice for you guys to show you how to make it, but we're going to jump to the phone screen because, you know, we have more pictures, more playlists here. So this is how it should look like in the end. Now, the last thing I want you guys to do, and I'm going to make only one of these with you guys, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to make the rest on your own. So make sure you follow along. So you go back to your assets section, and you will see a text that says music. So click on the text that says music, and again on your top panel, I want you to go and either do frame, or you can just click on music, right click, and you'll see this thing right under group selection that says frame selection. So you can make a frame around it, or you can right click and say frame selection. And it added a frame around the text. And I'm going to double click on that frame and call it filter. So double click on the text, which is the frame that has the music text, and call it filter. And we're going to go to our right panel again and click on the plus next to auto layout. And if you look on the right here, so what Figma did is it understood that both the content is being hugged by the entire container. So our container here is the filter, and hug means that it's not adding any padding or any spacing. It's just hugging the content, literally, if that makes sense. So there's a vertical hug and there's a horizontal hug. I'm just alluding to this right now, and I'll explain a little more in detail, but that's what hug is doing. And you're going to go to your right panel where you've added the auto layout, and we're going to add some padding to this. So padding is the last row. It should have like a line, a box, and another line. And I want you to add padding of 15 for the right and the left, and 5 for the top and the bottom. So again, I'm going to click on the filter text, which is selecting the auto layout frame. The third row in the auto layout section, for the horizontal padding, which is the first 0 that you'll see, I want you to type in 5. And for the vertical padding, I want you to type in 15. Oh, sorry, I did that reverse. Oops. I want your horizontal padding to be 15 and your vertical padding to be 5. Sorry. Okay, so it should look something like that. And let's go to the fill and add another color to it. And we're going to click on the color picker. So I'm going through this a little faster because it's the same steps as last time. I'm adding the same fill as these playlist items using the color dropper. And in the right panel, you'll see the corner radius, and I want you to set that to 25. So click on the filter text. Corner radius is right next to the word hug, right under the word hug, and we're going to type 25, and we have our first chip. Now, if you look right here on the phone screen, I've made a horizontal layout of all of these other labels. I'm going to play some music in the background and give you guys exactly 5 minutes. to make the rest of this. And it shouldn't be too hard if you listen to the directions earlier. You're just copy pasting and putting things in auto layout. So if you have any questions, I will check the chat. Give you guys exactly 5 minutes. So ready, set, go. Yes, you're making the top bar with the categories. So if you look on the phone screen that you've been provided, you'll see these little tags, chips. You can click on it to see how I built it as well, but I want you guys to try and build it on your own. And if you're thinking of like copy pasting it 4 times, remember you don't have to do it. Just copy paste it once, add an auto layout around it, and you can do, if you just copy paste it the rest of the time, it'll maintain the same spacing and padding. And this might just be me or my personal opinion, but I do like naming my layers, especially when you're making a lot of auto layout frames. It helps you keep track of how many you're making, and it also helps you know what layout each one is in. So yeah, I use auto layout all the time, and I like to name the frames as well. So just, yeah, if you want to do that, or if you want to have frame 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's your reference too. Let's see, maybe 5 minutes is too long. No, okay, I'll give you guys some time. Let's do 1 more minute, 1.5 more minutes, so that we can next part as well. And if you're done, feel free to just play around with auto layout, because sometimes it can get confusing when you're trying to make nested auto layouts. So if you want to just play with some combinations, go for it. Guys, 1 more minute. Okie time up. I know I said 5 minutes, but I think most of you guys are done, so I don't want to keep you waiting. Okay, so you should have this entire frame now. If you want to change the color of it, you can just, again, click on the fill and see that I've added this color. So you'll be able to find that and make your top bar. So that was pretty much most of the sectioning part of auto layout and how to organize things. Now, in the last 10-15 minutes, I want to talk about fill and hug, which are some important settings that I didn't know about until I started working, honestly. So I will teach you guys some little tricks. So let's take one of these elements. So we're going to take this slow songs, and I'm just going to copy and paste outside of the frame so I can show you guys how to work with the settings. So again, just take one of these playlist chips, and on your right panel, you will see that it should be set to hug and hug. So this playlist is the container. So the container, if you're going for a horizontal layout, which is what this playlist has. So the playlist has a horizontal layout. Usually, if you want your content to change in a horizontal layout, you have to set the horizontal resizing to fill. but for the specific content. So we're going to click on the slow songs, and you're going to go to your right panel. So make sure the slow songs text is selected. Go to the right panel, and it should say fixed width. I want you to select fill container. So fill container for horizontal resizing, and let's do fill container for vertical resizing as well. So once you've set it to fill, now the key is the horizontal part has to be fill because we have set it to a horizontal auto layout. And when I change the size of my container, the content should wrap. Now I know it looks a little gross, but let me adjust the spacing with that so you can kind of see it wrap. So I'm going to double click on the text, and it's like, if you see under the text medium, that's the line height. I'm just going to drag it and make it like 42 and show you again. So you click on the playlist frame and it should just wrap. So you see what it's doing there. So the image is not wrapping because we haven't set it yet, but the content is wrapping. So that's what this means is when you set the content inside the container to be fill, it'll wrap. Usually the container is set to fixed because we're trying to change that, or we can do hug as well. So if you do hug, it'll go to the size of the content. So let me show you an example. Click on the playlist frame, expand the length of it to go all the way out. And if you see this container inside, the slow songs, mine is set to fixed. So I know that my container playlist is going to come until the end of this slow songs container when you do hug. So when you're doing hug, it just kind of hugs the element inside. So if you click on the playlist, go to the right side and you do hug contents, you see how it just kind of hugged the size of the text. So the reason you want to keep it in fill is because if your slow songs text is set to fixed, you select on the playlist and you try to do that. You see this clip content that's happening on the right panel. This is what was enabled. If you remember a couple of classes ago, we talked about this. Since you told the item slow songs to be fixed, it's not going to change no matter what you do to the container. And we don't want that. It's going to stay fixed, right? We want it to wrap. So if you, again, do fill container, whatever the size of the container is, it's going to fill up that space and it's going to wrap. So that's high level of what fill and hug and fixed means. So let's do that for the image as well. So what's happening here is if you click on the playlist and look on your right panel, the auto layout is showing you that it's justified to the bottom left. So I'm going to show you justification real quick. If you click just one above it, so you'll see these big blue lines. If you click just one above and say align left to the middle, content moves up. And if you do top, so you can just kind of use that for alignment, but we don't want it to align. I want this image to take up the whole space of the container. So I'm going to click the image, and I hope you've already guessed this, but it's missing the vertical space on top, right? So the thing I have to focus on here is the vertical resizing. So I'm going to, again, click on the image, and on the right panel where it says fixed, I'm going to say fill container. Now, there you go. So once you've changed that setting to fill container, the image is taking up the whole space of the container, and Figma kind of smartly just, chose the parts of the image that it can and pushed it up as well. So now if I change the size of my container, you see how the image just kind of resized according to the container? That's the cool part about making your content fill. So we have our text set to horizontal fill, our image is set to fill, and again, you can do horizontal fill as well. The problem with doing that is, you know how in Spotify you have that specific fixed width? If you do fill, it's gonna evenly take up the space of the entire container. So I'm just gonna turn the horizontal resizing back to fixed for the picture. So we're just going to do fixed, and I'm going to set it to be this because I want it to always be this horizontally. But vertically, it can be fill because when I set this and I drag the container, it's just changing. So there you go. That's an example of how you can use fix and fill to make your content a little responsive. And if you want to create what I did here, this is a little complex, but I can probably show it to you guys in the end of the class if you stay a couple more minutes. So that's what we have going with fix, hug, and fill. And let's see. Now we're going to take all these elements and put it inside the phone screen. And I'll show you guys how you can set the spacing inside the entire screen as well. So I think I forgot to drop a phone screen for you. Dylan, can you help me drop a blank screen? on the students section. I'll drop a couple too. Actually, okay, I'm just gonna take out this content. Okay. I'll drop these phone screens for you guys so I can show you how to do that. Or actually, it might be easier if you guys come and grab this as well. So if you can come up here and grab this homepage feed, just Control C and Control V in your section. Give you a second to do that. And I'm going to build all of this in auto layout. I'm going to show you guys. Hopefully you've kind of gotten the hang of it with like horizontal and vertical. Yeah, but let's just practice. Okay, does everyone have an empty phone screen? Let's see. I think yes. If not, you can come right up here and grab this one. Leave it right here. Okay, so what we're going to do is you made all these different elements, right? So I want you to take your horizontal layout element, Control C, and put it inside the frame. So you're going to select the home page feed text to select that frame, put it inside. And we're just going to kind of just place it anywhere because we're going to put it in auto layout. It's going to adjust automatically. So place your horizontal layout section, place your top bar in there. I'm just going to use mine from earlier. So place all the contents inside the screen and try to arrange it kind of like randomly because I want to show you how auto layout will just adjust everything. So again, take the stuff you made, put it in there. So if you have all the content in there now, and I've kind of, arranged it a little zigzag to show you, I want you to select all the auto layout sections you have. So hopefully now you see the merit of, naming your layers and making everything in an auto layout section because we're going to select this first section, which is your tags or filters. Hold Shift, select the playlist section. Hold Shift, select the text, try something else. Hold Shift and select the last horizontal layout you made for your album. And do Shift A or auto layout, and everything should be resized for you. Now, my container is going beyond the sides of my phone screen. So I'm just going to drag it back to the phone screen size. And if you remember from our prototyping class, we made you do a frame of the content inside, and we told you how you can do horizontal scrolling this way. When you do auto layout and you do all this stuff, this kind of alludes to how you can make scrolling easier as well. So all the content here can be scrollable while this top and bottom navigation stays fixed on the screen. And if you see, it already added, for me, it added at least 20 for a gap. So that the gap in between each of the items is 20, but your individual auto layout sections have their own gap, which is perfect. So this is kind of how you can put all your different auto layout pieces together in one frame. And even when you're trying to do scrolling, it'll really help you because if I just resize this container to be the size of the phone screen, it'll only make sure that the horizontal layout scrolls within this. So that's kind of how this will help you make prototyping much easier. And that is kind of it for class today in terms of prototyping. So I can answer a couple of questions for the last 5 minutes, or if you guys want to stay back and learn how to make this, we can do that as well. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that and ask any questions, and I'll be down to stay back and show you guys how to make this. I'll play some music while you guys do that, and feel free to just unmute and ask questions if you want, or type it in the chat.